So one of the biggest things being touted as a massive innovation for the upcoming Super Broly film from the side of the creators and also the fan base is the fact that Paragus is finally, quote-unquote, going to be a sympathetic character, which is a big load of bullshit, because if you've watched the first Broly movie and paid even a little bit of attention, you will see that even original Paragus is very much a sympathetic character, and also a very tragic one at that, with a very ironic yet oddly fitting conclusion to his storyline. See, Dragon Ball villains come in one of two varieties. You have the standard Dragon Ball villain, and then you have the subversive types. The standard guys are people like Daimao and Frieza, Cell, Super Buu, that kind of stuff. You know what you get from them. Their successes, of course, vary depending on like their designs and what kind of evil they do, but what you see is what you get with them. Whereas the subversive types, they have a lot of similar elements to the standard Dragon Ball villains to varying degrees, but there are things that set them apart from just being evil bastards you just want to see get their shit kicked in. For example, Fat Buu is very much just as much of a threat, if not more so, than Frieza. He's a force of destruction and mass genocide, but he's not really led by evil emotions. He's kind of like a naughty kid who was never really taught how to act any better, and when Mr. Satan does teach him morality, Fat Buu very quickly becomes a better and nicer person. And so he is an example of a subversive Dragon Ball villain. The next example would be Baby. While Baby does have a lot of cackling bad guy tendencies to him, his reasons for wanting to destroy the Saiyans are perfectly understandable considering the fact what the Saiyans did to his species, and Baby only really wants the Saiyans gone. He even specifically says through possessed Bulma that he wants to create a world, or rather a universe, where the Saiyan genocide of the Sufurians never happened, and that's a perfectly understandable thing to want, despite his cackling bad guy tendencies notwithstanding. And Paragus is very much a character, or rather an antagonist, in the same vein. He is a dude who does evil things and has evil intentions, but you get where this guy is coming from. You understand why he hates people like King Vegeta, and even Prince Vegeta by extension, and his whole relationship with Broly is one of the few redeeming facts about the Broly character, who is pretty much a big load of nothing. And before someone tells me, well, Ivan, maybe Broly's cooler than you give it credit for, I watched the first Broly movie before making this entire video, and I can pretty much tell you that no, if you took Paragus out of the entire equation of the first Broly movie, Broly would just be another fucking boring retard they have to beat the crap out of in like 30 minutes. So yeah, to get to the bottom of why I think Paragus, the original one, is awesome, comes down to the fact that he gives a crap about Broly. See, before Toriyama made a concerted effort to soften the Saiyans up, to make them seem nicer, and to kind of ease off the rough edges which made them so interesting and appealing in the first place, there was this pretty big narrative that Saiyans were majoritively a terrible species. They were genocidal barbarians who wanted to kill and destroy because they liked to kill and destroy, and with exceptions like King Vegeta caring specifically about his son and Bardock having some kind of camaraderie with his team, Saiyans by and large did not give a shit about each other, and they very much viewed them each other as disposable pawns. Like, Vegeta kills Nappa despite the fact that their species is on the brink of extinction. He's gonna kill Goku and Gohan, and he has no problems with letting Raditz stay dead and being essentially the only Saiyan left alive. So that pretty much should give you a good idea of what the original Saiyan species and mentality was concerning their fellow members of the same species. And Paragus is immediately different because he cares about Broly. He doesn't care about Broly because of his power. That's never ever implied at all until much later on in the story, where Paragus's stance on Broly is become twisted and kind of like a sick perversion of what it used to be. Paragus cares about Broly because Broly is his son, and he doesn't want to see his son die because King Vegeta is afraid that Broly might be able to overtake the royal family, i.e. King Vegeta and, of course, Prince Vegeta. And when Paragus learns about what King Vegeta intends to do to his baby son, Paragus stands up for him. He goes to his boss, essentially, and he pretty much begs him for Broly's life, to spare him, because he thinks Broly could be a very big asset to the Saiyan species. And then when King Vegeta sees this, not only does he ask King Paragus what is he doing there, as though killing a little baby boy, Paragus's son, is like no big deal, King Vegeta then decides to get rid of Paragus and Broly both because they're both kind of threats to his rule. And so Paragus is tossed aside just like his almost murdered son and left to die in like the dung heap trashes of planet Vegeta. This is already a really good setup for an antagonist. You see where this guy used to be, and you see where this guy is coming from throughout the whole rest of the storyline. But it's really what happens later on that makes Paragus Paragus a tragic character, because Paragus cares about Broly as a person, and then as the years go by and he's left to deal with Broly and he gets to see what kind of monster his son is, how King Vegeta was in a lot of ways maybe even right to try and get rid of him while he was still an infant and much less able to defend himself, Paragus admits that he becomes terrified of his son, and whatever genuine affection for him existed is pretty much evaporated by both that terror and his need for revenge. And so Broly, this son he legitimately cared about in a human way as we understand it, is just a tool for revenge. And it's very much what Bardock led to at the end of the Bardock special, because Bardock in the special, in the Japanese original version, does not give a shit about Goku until he realizes, oh man, my son is going to kill Frieza, or rather he's going to beat Frieza, and he's going to avenge the Pride of the Saiyans. And so Bardock only ever learns how to care about Goku as a tool for revenge, which is essentially what Paragus also does to Broly as well, except Paragus actually lives long enough to use Broly as a tool for revenge. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, when the planet is about to be destroyed and Paragus has absolutely no chance of controlling Broly ever again, he decides to abandon his son, though it does sadden him a little, but he ultimately says, you're useless to me, I can't control you anymore, I can't use you to control and rule the universe, and so I'm just gonna leave you to die. And Paragus himself even muses to himself as he's being murdered by his own son, that is this the destiny of assigned fathers, to be murdered by their own children. And this creates a really ironic, very tragic end for his character, because this is a dude who actually cared about his son as a kind of like a human being, and ultimately he ends up being murdered by this very same son after decades of living with him have burned away whatever genuine affection was there. This makes Paragus a really cool antagonist, not only because he's a schemer and not a fighter, not only because he doesn't spend like all of his screen time cackling about how he's gonna get revenge and that kind of stuff. He is a sympathetic character whose motivations you can understand, and his ending, while kind of really fucked up, is tragic and ironically kind of fitting. So no, Paragus being some kind of sympathetic antagonist is not an innovation. This is something that was already done in the first Broly movie and is easily the most compelling part of what is mostly an okay-ish film and is largely forgettable, and Paragus absolutely does help elevate the material. So yeah, those are my reasons for why OG Paragus is awesome. He deserves more respect, and he is easily the closest thing Dragon Ball has ever done to a well-written, successfully executed, sympathetic antagonist.